Welcome, Four-Eyed fans, to the last Four-Eyed pregame show of the fantasy football season. We have arrived at Week 16, although technically Week 16 started on Friday. So we've been in Week 16 for at least 4 games this season so far, or this week so far. So welcome. I'm your host, Jorge Edwards, and around the frames, we're going to go meeting all the other Fantasy and Frames crew members here. We got Jonathan Klenowski from the UK. How you doing, Jonathan?
Hey, yeah, not too bad. I was having a good Christmas, and then I'm actually playing against Alvin Kamara in my home league, so it went a little bit downhill towards the end of the day, but you know.
That sounds bloody lovely. Todd, how are you doing, my friend?
I'm doing well. Kind of bittersweet last show of the year, so
a little bit. Teddy, how you doing, sir?
Doing well, man. Doing well.
And of course, our brother from another mother, David from FantasyGo.com. If you haven't already, head over to FantasyGo.com today. Hire your favorite fantasy football analyst to lead you to your Four-Eyed title this afternoon. How you doing, David?
Not too bad. And that was actually a pretty decent use of the word bloody, so kudos to you there.
Thank you. We got a little comment from the Dynasty Rewind podcast. Make sure to follow the Dynasty Rewind podcast on Twitter. It's nice to see Todd with a shirt on. Yeah, our holiday show got a little crazy.
Fantasy frame shirt.
Very nice. Yeah, our holiday show got a little crazy, but I hope everybody at least had fun with us as we hung out and just let loose and really let loose. Missing the Markhams today, so hopefully they're doing well. And with that, let's talk about some stuff. This season has been great. Thank you very, very much for visiting fantasyandframes.com all season long. But we're not done. Let me put this another way. We're done for 2020 for fantasy football, but fantasy baseball is starting to pick up right now. As soon as we're done, Aaron and his crew and Todd, you're part of the baseball crew, and Nate will be heading up all of our fantasy baseball content here at fantasyandframes.com. And let's not forget, we're going to be having Dynasty fantasy football content come to fantasyandframes.com this year. So starting in mid-January, we'll be covering that all the way through draft season. And before you know it, it's going to be redraft season, and we're going to be right back with you again, helping you win those fantasy football championships. And let's not forget, the Four-Eyed Championships tournament, our charity tournament, will be crowned. Our champion will be crowned this week. It's between David Gutierrez here at Fantasy and Frames versus Ryan Weiss from Club Fantasy FFL.
Oh, Ryan make it. Good on him.
He did. He's in the tournament. He's in the thick of it. And ironically, or I shouldn't say ironically, but he both of these competitors have like the same quarterbacks, the same running backs, the same wide receivers for the most part, going against one another. So it's going to be kind of interesting to see how they're doing. Dynasty Rewind with another comment. What do they have to say? The Markhams are still hungover from said holiday party. You are correct there, Michael Bauer. And if you're not following Michael Bauer, follow words. I can talk. The M Bauer 85 on Twitter. And so, we got the Four-Eyed Championships champion. Thank you very much for everybody who participated in the tournament this year. Thank you very much for representing your charities. It's great. It's for a great cause. And we're going to be doing it again next year. Hopefully we get more players, more teams involved. So stay tuned for that in 2020. But let's finish, 2021. But let's finish 2020 off with a bang. Let's just get right into it. Giants.
Before we do, hopefully Mike is still online, but I want to open up a topic. So I was in Starbucks the other day, right? And someone paid it forward. Someone paid it forward for me, right?
That's common, by the way.
And I just accepted the gift, and I didn't pay it forward back. I put it online on Facebook, and Mike was commenting. I got torn apart for being a cheapo. It has to end somewhere, right? I'm not a big fan of this pay it forward thing. I don't know. It makes people feel bad. What if the guy behind me had like 7 kids and they all had like
Okay, so I'll give you a good example. I did that. I did what you did once, and I felt guilty as hell for it. So the next day I got back in line at Starbucks and I paid it forward. That being said, yesterday I did the exact same thing. I let somebody cut into the long line at Starbucks, which, shame on me, right? But they then paid for my drinks because I let them in.
But you let them in. You gave them a service. There you go.
Right. Yeah. So I only was going to pay $5 for my coffee, so it's like whatever. So I decided to pay it forward, and then the lady, the cashier person, was like, "Okay, so their total is $23.65," and I'm like, "I was just going to pay $5, and now I have to pay." So I still did it, right? Because at that point you're kind of committed.
You can't say no.
Right? No, exactly. But What is
Is
Mike
it worse if you hear the
Yeah,
price?
exactly, Mike. This isn't communist China, guys. All right, it's America. It's America, all right?
You know,
Make your own
just
damn coffee.
yeah, so
Not fantasy football related whatsoever. But
but it comes in handy in the off season and every day of like life that you go out to Starbucks and you get some coffee if you're a Starbucks drinker. All right, let's get into it. Giants, Ravens. Lamar Jackson, he's been on a tear in recent weeks. You know, are we comfortable starting him this week in Week 16 of your fantasy football championship, Steady?
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of torn because I have to start him in a league, and so that I'd like to win. So, I mean, I think just the way that he's been playing, the way he's been moving, I think that they're going to keep the ball on the ground the entire game, and I think that he's going to benefit at least from the rushing yards. He's still not going to put up more than 200 passing yards, I bet, but I think just from the rushing attack, you know, I think you have to kind of go with him at this point.
I'm all on board J.K. Dobbins. I think he has dominated. I don't think he has dominated the touches the past few weeks here for the Ravens backfield for the running back situation. He has dominated the touches 12-5 to him to Gus Edwards in the red zone when in scoring position. I think this is a tough matchup. The Giants defense is pretty tough, but I still think the volume and the fact that you have Lamar Jackson opening up those running lanes for J.K. Dobbins, who's getting the majority of the work there, he should have a pretty decent day. You know, he has been a little bit touchdown dependent. Don't get me wrong. He's not putting up monster numbers, but he can get you those 14 or 15 fantasy points in half PPR scoring that will definitely pay dividends this week. David, do you agree or disagree? Are you still firmly on the Gus bus?
no, I think it's going to be either one of them. That's the trouble, is that when they get a goal line carry on the 1 yard line, there's just no set in stone goal line back. So you're just risking that Gus Edwards is going to eat into JK's work or vice versa. I think they're just as good as each other, to be honest, but I think they cap each other's ceiling.
Todd, wide receivers for the Ravens, who are we thinking about?
I mean, the best wide receiver on the team is Mark Andrews, but Hollywood's not a bad option, but I mean, he is questionable, so I don't know how much. I saw that he's likely a go, but I just don't know how much run he'll actually get.
On the flip side, going backwards a little bit for the Giants, is it Daniel Jones or is it Mr. Colt McCoy this week? Who knows? I have no idea. I think that should tell you all you need to know about the Giants quarterback situation. For running back,
we are amazing fantasy analysts.
I know. Thank you. We are super prepared Week 16. But these are things there are things you need to know. There are things you don't need to know. And there are things that just don't matter. And so that little tirade or that little rant was something that just didn't matter. Devonta Freeman potentially could be coming back, but it's still Wayne Gallman, right, Jonathan?
Yeah, but I mean, you see, Dion Lewis, Alfred Morris coming in. So I mean, looking at the usage in the last couple of weeks, I don't think you can really trust Wayne Gallman, especially in your championship week.
Very good. Evan Ingram seems to be the only consistent receiving target for the Giants. Is there anybody else that I'm missing here, Todd?
I don't think so. I mean, this isn't really. This Ravens secondary is nasty. This definitely is not a game that. Exactly. They have Mark Andrews, but yeah, this really isn't a game where I want to mess with any of the Giants wide receivers. Daniel Jones is going to be the quarterback, but even still, he's been banged up. So I mean, this isn't a game I want to mess with him.
All right, and for IDP purposes, for the Giants, Jabril Peppers, Blake Martinez, Leonard Williams, defensive back, linebacker, defensive lineman, all great studs in the IDP community. Definitely should be starting them, as well as Logan Ryan. Just got that contract extension from the New York Giants, played really well. He's in real football, he's not great at preventing receivers from catching the ball, but he is great at tackling receivers who catch the ball, and that's great for fantasy football purposes. So fire up Logan Ryan. Oh my God! Fire up Logan Ryan in your cornerback spot this week. I'd rather get another vasectomy than start Evan Ingram. Wow. Okay.
That thread that you put on Twitter was very interesting.
That was cool.
Yeah, for those who haven't seen.
Yeah, you should definitely go to the VM Bauer85 on Twitter and look for that vasectomy thread. Yes, I said we'll get a vasectomy thread on the fantasy football show. Okay, so with that, let's. I'm sorry, for the Ravens, Patrick Queen, Chuck Clark. Those are the people that you're firing up in Week 16 for your championship in IDP. Let's go now to the Browns and Jets. Wow, we got a bunch of news yesterday where basically there are no Browns wide receivers available that we can speak of on offense to talk about. For what does this mean? This means big Nick Chubb day and Kareem Hunt's your wide receiver one, right, Teddy?
Yep. I think they have to have a body out there, that's going to have to be out there, like even in the slot, So, I think that Kareem Hunt's going to do really well in the in receiving today. I don't think they're going to be allowed to let Nick Chubb leave the field.
Dynasty Rewind talking about Marvin Hall, the former, I believe, Lion, who was doing well for the Lions, and then they cut him for some reason. So now he's the only experienced wide receiver for the Browns. Get out of here. There's no way I'm trusting Marvin Hall in my championship matchup. Now here's David. Somebody by the name of David Ibrahim.
Who's that?
Interesting. You could have at least made an attempt to cover up the name here.
Who is that guy?
That's great. Yeah.
Oh my God.
I don't know who that is.
What's up, Roadshow?
Sounds sexy though.
Let's see here. We said first time, long time, loaded question. 2 running backs, 1 wide receiver. Jesus, it is a loaded question. Keenan Allen, Gage. Well, Keenan Allen's out. They're trending towards out, so you can cross him off your list.
You
Russell,
sure? I read this morning that he's going to be game time decision still.
I got an alert from the NFL fantasy app that I needed to take him out of my lineup because he's projecting 0 points and not to play.
Damn. Okay.
But take that for what you will.
Gage, Davis, Zeke, Pollard, Carson, Johnson, Williams, Johnson. Wow. Okay, that helped. So I would say
Let's help this guy out, all right? Stop laughing.
That's true. He, long time. First year.
Okay, so I'm all on board the Russell Gage bandwagon. No Julio, he's been very productive. I think he's definitely a must start this week. So there's your 1 wide receiver.
Carson and David Johnson are the 2 running backs.
Yeah, Carson for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so Carson, Russell Gage.
Is Zeke still questionable, or is he?
No, he's playing.
He's playing.
He's playing.
Well, he'll be out there. We'll see what happens.
Yeah.
I like Pollard in that backfield.
Right. So we have Gage, Carson, Pollard. I think you have to go David Johnson just because I don't know what out of these options who's the one who's going to be getting the most volume here.
He had something like 11 receptions last
Oh
week.
yeah, he had 100 yards receiving last week.
So,
It was the David Johnson that we wanted to see all season here in Houston. So the people I would consider is and he left. He left and he's asking a question for us and he left.
Well, we don't talk about Gus Edwards.
Person happens to be.
Yeah, so
He went to go set his lineup.
There you go.
he has limited bandwidth, and so he's like, okay, let me go set my lineup. Yeah. All right, we'll get back to that in a second when he jumps back on. All right, let's go to our next matchup real quick. Bears and Jaguars. So did I read this correctly this morning that because the Raiders lost, or because who was it that lost? The Cardinals lost. That the Bears have a chance of sneaking into the 3rd wild card spot. This is ridiculous.
The Bears.
They're going against Jacksonville. Dare we start Mitchell Trubisky this week, Teddy?
I think you could dare just because I don't think the Jags are going to pull a Jets and blow their shot at the number 1 pick. So even if they resemble a winning team this week, I think they're going to pull everybody and be like, oh no, what happened? And so, I think there's some value there, but I think honestly, it's been this way for 3 weeks. The Bears player that you want it's going to be the David Montgomery show again. He's going to ball out.
Totally agree with that. Let's go to another question by Coach Dish. Decimated by injuries and COVID, Marvin Hall, Tyron Johnson, Gallman, Pollard, Fant. David, you're back. We'll get to your question.
Sorry, dudes. Internet problems.
No worries. We're answering this question for flex and PPR. Marvin Hall, Tyron Johnson, Wayne Gallman, Tony Pollard, Noah Fant.
Tough.
Call me nuts here. Call me crazy. But I'm kind of thinking Tyron Johnson may be the play here out of everybody here. Marvin Hall, can you trust the Browns wide receiver in this matchup? Wayne Gallman, we just discussed earlier, a lot of running backs coming in there in New York. Tony Pollard, is Zeke really ready to go? I think they just activated a running back yesterday off of the practice squad. So what does that mean for Zeke?
I would prefer if they just sat Zeke. It would make
I would prefer that they would make all these lineup decisions easy for us 2 hours before kickoff, but that's
because it's one of the later games as well.
It is? Okay.
Well, there we go. Noah Fant has been playing very well. PPR reception, PPR upside. For me, it's down to Fant or Tyron Johnson. Todd, if you had to pick, you're Mr. Wide Receiver guy, you're Mr. PPR guy. What are your thoughts here?
Honestly, I kind of want to roll Pollard. I just kind of think that, like you said, they're bringing up a guy from the practice squad as a backup running back. I honestly don't really expect Zeke to be out there too much. I mean, I expect him to maybe go out there a few plays, but I honestly think Pollard could get a ton of run today. But honestly, if you're going out of wide receivers, like you said, call me crazy, but I kind of like Ty Johnson right there as well.
All right, so how about we go
more than the other ones?
I missed your answer before when the internet cut out. Did you guys say to start Zeke?
No.
Yeah.
You did?
I mean, yeah. No, we didn't.
Okay.
You start Zeke.
That David guy should.
So we're going to go Pollard 1, Tyron Johnson 2, Coach Dish. All right, let's go back to the Bears. What am I doing?
Do you think they
here?
cut Zeke next year? I know it's not fantasy related, but do you think they go with Pollard? Because someone will take Zeke.
I saw something on Instagram. I forget which sites, bold takes there were, but it was Zeke getting traded to the Jets. I think it was Bleacher Report had something like that, which
God.
like, really? You're going to tank his fantasy value right there? Okay, fantastic. Back to the Bears and Jaguars. We said yes to Trubisky. We said yes to David Montgomery, Allen Robinson. Cole Kmet, is he becoming a thing in the tight end fantasy landscape that we should be paying attention to, Jonathan?
Yeah, I think he's someone that we should pay attention to. I'm not sure if I would. I'm not sure I'd start him this week, considering it's week 16. But I know that it's someone that Mike has spoke about in terms of his value going forward. I think he's someone that people should be aware of. So when it comes around to draft season next year, it's someone that people keep in their minds when it comes to draft season.
Yeah, Jacob Reed joining the show here. Sorry if you haven't covered this already. This one is just for Teddy. I have a feeling, Teddy, you're facing somebody in a fantasy championship this week, or at least.
Yeah, it's one of my friends. He texted me this morning, and it's actually going to be for everybody because just for Teddy. I texted you about this already. He's got Josh Allen and Jalen Hurts today, and he's trying to figure out what to do, and he's got his opponent has Diggs, and it's kind of funny because we looked at it, and if you look at the ESPN rankings, and I guess it depends on whose rankings you want to go with and all that stuff. But they have Josh Allen ranked 3 and Jalen Hurts ranked 4. So it's kind of a
I'd go Hurts.
Yeah.
You need upside here.
Hurts.
And I understand New England doesn't have Stephon Gilmore, but that secondary is still pretty decent with the McCourty twins, Jackson. In the air, New England can shut you down. So, look, I'm still expecting Josh Allen to do okay, but I don't think he's going to put up a performance like he did against the Broncos. I think it's going to be like 200 in the air, maybe 80 on the ground, and 3 touchdowns, whether it be 1 rushing and 2 in the air or something. He'll give up okay numbers, but Hurts is where the upside is.
Yeah, Bill Belichick has definitely capped, Allen's upside whenever they've played each other since Allen has been in the league. Give me Jalen Hurts to jump out to a big lead. Look, he has the rushing volume. They both have the rushing floor, I should say. But, one's going against Bill Belichick's defense, the other one's going against the Dallas Cowboys. So I think you can kind of take that for what it's worth. I'd go Jalen Hurts today. That would just be my take there. On the flip side for the Jaguars, they're going back to Mike Glennon. This is good. This is good for DJ Chark.
They don't want to win.
They're not winning today.
No James Robinson. You're not firing up any of those backup running backs there. DJ Chark, I put this in my before I started the sit column this week. Is Trevor Lawrence the quarterback? Nope. Wait till he is. To fire up DJ Chark. That's just my personal take. If somebody else has a different opinion, just let me know. That being
There's
said,
no one in Jacksonville that I'm really starting, to be honest.
Not one person.
Not one person.
You say that, and I just for IDP purposes, I would say Joe Schobert and Miles Jack. But if they're trying not to win, maybe they don't start those two and they put up some backup.
Do they try not to win? I can't see teams doing that. I think they'll still try and win.
We got Carrie Markham. She's joining the show. Welcome back, Carrie. And let's see here. Dynasty Rewind, guys, never trust Philadelphia in a positive narrative. I feel like this sounds like a disgruntled Eagles fan. And then Carrie Ann Markham is going with, well, boo to you, Carrie. Okay. I'm just kidding. Anyhow, so that covers the Bears. Oh, sorry, for the Bears, Khalil Mack, Roquan Smith. Those are the guys you want for Chicago in terms of IDP purposes. Let's go, Teddy, your neck of the woods, Colts and Steelers. I think this is where Phillip Rivers kind of comes back down to earth. I'm not comfortable starting Phillip Rivers this week. I think he's down 2 starting offensive tackles. Meanwhile, the Steelers have TJ Watt on one side, and they're getting back Vince Williams to help with that pass rush. I'm not liking any of this, to be honest with you, for the Colts. Let's talk about running back situation. There is no running back situation in Pittsburgh, which is really crazy because for so long, the Steelers have been that team that focused on just that one running back, that one bell cow running back that they can count on. And unfortunately, it's turned into the Connor show, the Samuels show, the Snell show, all in one episode. It's been ridiculous. I would be surprised if the Steelers don't address running back in the NFL draft this year a little bit with a little bit more emphasis in the earlier rounds. But we'll get to that in a different day. That
would be a good spot for Zeke, I reckon. Zeke's Pittsburgh.
Can you imagine what they would have to give up to? I don't know. What are we thinking about the running back situation for the Colts? So Jonathan Taylor, Naeem Hines. My instinct, my thoughts here are, if my offensive line is crumbling around me and I have pass rushers coming at me left and right, I kind of want to get this ball off and dump it off as quickly as possible. I think this could be more of a Naeem Hines game than a Jonathan Taylor game. David, what are your thoughts there?
I worry about Jonathan Taylor. It's just, look, he's had a couple of great runs, and when he does, he saves your fantasy day. But they'll use different running backs depending on their game script. Like I said, if they're down, they dump off passes to Hines. If they're absolutely getting crushed, then they might actually bring in Wilkins. So you just never know. I wouldn't risk it, but you may not have a better option. It's Jonathan Taylor.
Todd, let me ask you a question. If you had to pick one, and I know we have start sit questions coming in, and thank you very much for sending in your start and sit questions. We'll answer them all show long. If you had to pick one, okay, T.Y. Hilton or Deonte Johnson, who are you putting your faith in this week, Todd?
Ooh. I'm just gonna. I think Deontay might have a little bit more upside, but I'm gonna go with Ty just because I think he's had 70+ yards in each of the last 4 weeks, and then he has 4 touchdowns in that span. He's been consistent, and Phillip Rivers and him have been starting to get that connection down. I think that's probably what it took, is just them building getting those reps together to finally get their rhythm going, and we've seen that in the last 4 weeks. And Deontay Johnson, I mean, no one gets peppered with targets like him. I mean, the amount of double-digit target games he's had is ridiculous, but, man, he has the case of the drop. So that's the one thing, is you never know how many balls he'll drop a game.
And, like we've heard before, head coach Mike Tomlin has said very clearly, look, if you're going to drop the ball, I'm going to give people who can catch the ball more of an opportunity. We saw that with Deontay versus the Bills when James Washington came in. Mm-hmm. Did Eric Ebron get targeted? I know he got 0 fantasy points, but did he even get targeted last week? I don't even know.
It was 1 target, I think.
Yeah. He got hit on his target, and he hurt his back.
Oh, okay. So that was injury related. So that has nothing to do with that at all. Okay. On the flip side,
I did see something. I think we spoke about it on a podcast. There was someone who was deciding between Juju and Eric Ebron. They just needed like 0.06 of a point or something. So they just needed like 1 yard or 1 catch, and they went Ebron over Juju, but lost the week.
Teddy, well, speaking of Juju, Teddy, how comfortable are you starting Juju Smith-Schuster this week?
So I'm gonna be wrong. We'll put it that way, because it seems like whichever Steelers wide receiver you want to go with, it ends up being somebody else, right? With their 3-headed kind of attack between Johnson, Juju, and Claypool. But I personally just don't like Juju this week, right? In the sense that he's coming off of a bad game. We've seen this year that when he comes off of a bad game, he then puts up a good one. But that being said, he's the kind of guy that, like, when he's not mentally in the game, it's tough for him to get going. And there's been so much surrounding his dancing on the logos and all this kind of stuff. And, like, even though he's not doing it, I think he's going to be thrown off today just from a mental aspect. And so I think that the 2 year I have him ranked 3rd out of my Steelers wide receivers this week.
All right, and rounding out this game for IDP purposes, TJ Watt, Vince Williams, Cameron Hayward, Stephon Tuitt. I think these are all great defensive linemen and linebacking positions to play this week. And then basically anybody who's an edge rusher going against this Colts Colts offensive line, I think you're starting for IDP purposes. For the Colts, DeForest Buckner starting from the very front defensive line. DeForest Buckner, Darius Leonard, and Kari Willis at strong safety. Let's go on to Nate's favorite team. We got the Chiefs and the Falcons. Look, Nate Markham, he brought up a great stat during our Fantasy Playbook podcast last week. The Chiefs have only allowed 3 wide receivers all season to top 100 yards receiving. Does that change this week with the Falcons coming to town, Todd?
I mean, I don't necessarily see why not, just because I think the Atlanta defense isn't very good and the Chiefs are going to score in bunches. But then again, like the Chiefs have been very good against wide receivers and limiting the big plays. Even the touchdowns, they haven't given up too many touchdowns compared to other teams when it comes to wide receivers. But, hey, I mean, Matt Ryan's going to have to throw the ball today, and Calvin Ridley and Russell Gage are both capable wide receivers, and I got a feeling they'll be getting peppered with targets.
Yeah, Russell Gage, I believe he had 10 targets, a career high last week.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a big fan of Russell Gage. I think he's going to have another monster game. I think the target volume is there. He doesn't need to get you 100 yards receiving if you're playing in half PPR or PPR leagues. Just get those receptions, get a little short yardage touchdown, and just get 60 yards. You're happy with that production. He's been averaging the past 3 weeks 14.9 fantasy points per game, which last week would have kept him as a wide receiver 1. So just keep that in mind in terms of his production going forward. David, I want to get your take real quick. Le'Veon Bell. What are your thoughts on Le'Veon Bell this week? No Clyde Edwards-Helaire for Kansas City.
I think he's going to be the overall running back 1 this week. I really do. I think they're gonna feed him a ton, and he's going to absolutely eat. So that's a call that I made earlier this week, and I still stick to it. Le'Veon Bell, especially in DFS. I love Le'Veon Bell this week.
Got Michael Bauer from the Dynasty Rewind podcast joining us. Welcome, Mike.
Good afternoon, gentlemen. Well, it's not afternoon yet, so good morning. And by the way, I'm not a disgruntled Eagles fan, Jorge. You know me better.
No, they're just Eagles fans. No,
we can't see you, Mike.
I understand.
What's that, David?
We can't see you.
You can't see me?
Yeah.
And David also forgot about AK.
Sorry. I'm here. It says,
I see you.
Working.
We'll work on some. Okay. Well, I see you. Yeah, exactly. We'll work on that as we keep going through the show. Look, for the Chiefs, it's obvious Patrick Mahomes. As David said, Le'Veon Bell has a great upside this week. When given the opportunity last week, he did very well with it. Even though the Falcons are good against the run. Sorry for being redundant here. The volume's just going to be there in the second half, I believe. Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelce, those are the guys you're trusting for Atlanta. Ito Smith is going to be the primary ball carrier, taking over for Todd Gurley. I think Todd Gurley's days are done, personally speaking, in the NFL as the lead running back. I don't know what else he could potentially be.
He's undraftable, I think.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I'm staying away from Ito Smith, just not having any of that. And then let's see here. And then for IDP purposes, the Chiefs, we'll get into the Chiefs IDP purposes and when we talk about dynasty, but it's not looking good for redraft this week. For the Falcons, Foye Olakun, linebacker, Deion Jones, linebacker, Keanu Neal, strong safety. You're playing them. Definitely going to want to need them this week for your fantasy championship. Okay, this game should go by really quickly. Bengals and Texans. Man, Texans, Deshaun Watson, David Johnson. Is that all we can trust on offense, David? Is there anybody else here?
I'm okay with Cooks at the flex. I mean, he'll give you safe numbers, probably get you 60 to 80 yards, maybe 5 or 6 catches, and you might be lucky and get a touchdown out of him, but no more than a flex. That's really where his cap is.
Jonathan, last week Giovanni Bernard had himself a week going against Pittsburgh, and the upset of upsets of last week, which nobody saw coming. What are your thoughts on his potential output this week?
I think he has a pretty safe floor. He had something like 80 to 85% of the running back attempts last week. So I think if you need a safe floor, there are worse options. I worry about his ceiling, because with the quarterback situation in Cincinnati, that they're not really going to be moving the ball that much. So I do worry a little bit about his upside.
Speaking of moving the ball that much, Todd, no Tyler Boyd this week. Is this a big T. Higgins game, do you think, from a fantasy perspective?
I'll be waiting to start Bengals pass catchers until Joe Burrow comes back next year.
I don't think he's even predicted to come back next year. I think 2022 is when he's projected to be back, given how late in the season he suffered that catastrophic knee injury. So,
okay, well,
well,
I might not be playing for a while then.
All right. For IDP purposes, for the Bengals, it's Von Bell, it's Jesse Bates, it's Sam Hubbard. The first two are the two starting safeties. Sam Hubbard, defensive lineman. For the Texans, it's Zach Cunningham and Tyrell Adams. Those are the guys you want to be starting. I know J.J. Watt is a name. He is a name. Don't always play, players in fantasy football just on name value alone. He can be very streaky. So I would avoid J.J. this week just because of the lack of consistency he's had this season. Let's go now to Panthers and Washington football team. Antonio Gibson is back. Oh, we got a Panthers fan in the house. Nice. Very nice. Very nice. Are they your team?
Yeah. It's the Ron Rivera revenge game.
It is. And he's actually going to have his starting running back with him finally after a few weeks off. Great timing for fantasy championships. Are we trusting Antonio Gibson this week, Teddy?
Oh, yeah. I think you can trust Antonio Gibson, and I think you can trust J.D. McKissick in the sense that they don't have Scary Terry, and the Panthers resemble some relevant defense stopping, receivers. So I think they're going to keep it on the ground, and I think it's going to be those two in the Logan Thomas show.
Speaking of Logan Thomas, he has emerged as the receiving option for this Washington football team, more so than Scary Terry has the past few weeks. He's out-targeted Terry McLaurin in the past 3 weeks, 34 targets to 24. He's been averaging 14.7 fantasy points per game during that stretch to Terry McLaurin's 5.9. That's just staggering to me. Mike, for dynasty purposes, is there anybody in this game we should be paying attention to?
Yeah, obviously the Panthers, you got DJ Moore. He's a stud. Curtis Samuel, I think, is absolutely fantastic. I'm not a Robbie Anderson guy. I would probably try to buy Ian Thomas super cheap right now if I could, because people have just really fallen off the wagon. Also, one thing I'd like to correct myself about with the whole Washington tight end scenario at the beginning of the year. Remember, who is it? Was it Jordan Sprinkle? They had Thaddeus Moss there as an undrafted free agent. One of the things I said was, I don't know any of these guys, so it doesn't matter. I said that about this, and I said that about the New York Giants running back situation after Saquon Barkley got hurt. When in reality, if you had picked up a guy like Logan Thomas or Wayne Gallman, you would probably be extremely competitive. So for the Washington side, I'm out on Dwayne Haskins. I'm not a fan at all. I call him Dwayne the Suck Haskins. You can ask the guys on the rewind. That's what I call him. Love Antonio Gibson. J.D. McKissick could get himself a nice little contract somewhere. Could be like a flex running back number 2. Logan Thomas, obviously Terry McLaurin. And Jorge, you might be able to answer the secondary wide receiver options a little bit better for Washington. There's Antonio Gandy-Golden. Kelvin Harmon's a good buy right now. He's injured. So now start scouring those IRs and taxi squads for next year on your dynasty rosters.
Well, Antonio Gandy-Golden just got activated off of IR this week, so he could potentially be a good start, or at least good dynasty stash going forward. Kelvin Harmon, a lot of hype after the draft. Haven't seen the production the past season or so, but he tore his ACL, I believe, in the preseason. So give it a year. We'll see what he does next year before we start assigning value to him. But he's definitely on the cheap. Obviously, because what are people doing with him right now? Speaking of the quarterback situation in Washington, you mentioned Dwayne Haskins sucks. There's been some talk in our nation's capital that if the Cowboys won't pay Dak Prescott to be the most expensive quarterback in fantasy football, that football team might. What are your thoughts on that, David?
I think they'll bring him back. I think Dak wants to be in Dallas. I don't think he wants to leave. I'd be shocked. Look, he's not going to get Mahomes money. That's the trouble. Is Dak was after Mahomes' money. He's not Patrick Mahomes. He's a darn good quarterback, but he's not Patty Mahomes. So I don't know. I think they'll get a deal going in Dallas.
All right. And so, of course, Mike, you mentioned it. Robbie Anderson, DJ Moore, Mike Davis by necessity, right? We're playing if you're the CMC manager.
Rod Smith was vulturing some carries last week as well. I don't believe that's the Rod Smith of the former New York Giants and Cowboys ilk. That's a different Rodney Smith. He was watching film the other day. Who was I watching film on? Someone. I think he went to Purdue. I'm sorry, I didn't scout him yet. So, yeah, Mike Davis. But we're talking about guys getting vultured. Look at Latavius Murray getting targets on Christmas. Mike Boone got a touchdown, stole from Dalvin Cook. So, I mean, Mike Davis, yeah, hopefully, Matt Rule doesn't screw it up.
Right.
Put someone else in.
For Washington, we mentioned no Terry McLaurin. Todd, is there any other wide receiver we're comfortable starting there?
In Washington?
Yeah.
No.
Okay.
Especially at this point in the year, you have your roster set. Those guys are on waivers anyway. You're not going to put them in your lineup.
All right, let's go with the IDP really quickly. Shaq Thompson, linebacker for the Panthers. Jeremy Chin, safety for the Panthers. For Washington, it's really Chase Young and Cameron Curl. Nate Markham, our IDP guy here at Fantasy and Frames, he's been all over the Cameron Curl bandwagon since Landon Collins went down. Fire him up with confidence in your championship matchup this week. Going to our next matchup, the Broncos and the Chargers. Who's all aboard the Drew Lock bandwagon like I am this week? Insert sarcasm. Anybody?
He might surprise. The Chargers secondary isn't exactly anything ferocious. I mean, Marcus Mariota tore him apart. So
this is true.
And this is true. For the Broncos, though, Melvin Gordon is. What are your thoughts on Melvin Gordon, David?
Well,
especially getting into next year.
I'm starting to get over the fact that he didn't take a photo with me, but at SportsCon last year, I'll forgive him. Look, I think he's starting to get to that age where running backs just aren't effective. So I can't see him being some superstar. I want to say it was 2017 was when he had his best year with the Chargers, and he just hasn't been the same Melvin Gordon since. Don't forget that his first year, straight out of Wisconsin, he scored 0 touchdowns and didn't even get 1,000 rushing yards, right. And they absolutely featured him. So that was him, meant to be a stud straight out of Wisconsin. So I just don't believe in Melvin Gordon. I think he'll do fine today without Phillip Lindsay, but next year I don't know where he lands.
Teddy, for the wide receiver position here for Denver, Jerry Jeudy, KJ Hamler, Tim Patrick, are you comfortable starting any of those wide receivers in your championship game? Yep, that answers it. The shrug there.
I'm not comfortable doing it, but throw a dart if you have to.
Todd, on the flip side for the Chargers, no Keenan Allen, or at least he's trending towards being out this week. Is there anybody here that we're trusting? No Hunter Henry this week. Who are we going with in this receiving situation?
Mike Williams is healthy, so that is a guy.
Is he healthy, though? I know he's still a bit banged up.
He doesn't have a
designation,
so he's going to play, especially without no Keenan Allen. Someone's going to have to get the targets, so I don't hate Mike Williams, but I just know he's going to be relying on a big play. So whether he comes down when he goes in high points that catch, whether he comes down with it or not, because I don't know, he relies on that big play. So, but in the red zone today, I think he could get a look.
Jonathan,
I was just going to say I think it's going to be the Austin Eckler show. I think he's the guy that's going to see the majority of targets. We've already seen that Justin Herbert has pepped him with targets in quite a few of the games since Eckler came back. And with both of the Hunter Henry and Allen out, I think Eckler will probably be the main target.
That's exactly what I wanted to ask you, just because he has been on like a snap count as of late, coming back from injury. So out of necessity, they may just have to feature Eckler more and more. So very good there. From a dynasty perspective, Mike, anybody here that you're jumping out and grabbing as fast as possible?
Jalen Guyton's a guy that people are talking about a lot for the Chargers. If you don't trust Mike Williams and you want to play just a really cheap DFS play, Jalen Guyton worked with Justin Herbert a lot in the preseason, so they have a couple connections. He's kind of like boom or bust. Just your basic guys. Buy Drew Lock cheap. Cortland Sutton's on IR. Get him cheap for the Chargers. everyone's too expensive for me right now. So I'm kind of shying away from them. Not that I don't want them, just because of cost.
Right. For IDP, I'm only going to focus on the Broncos because there's nobody really on the Chargers that's jumping out to me as somebody that I want to be starting this week. So starting from the secondary, you got Justin Simmons at safety, moving up front towards linebackers. You got Josie Jewell and Alexander Johnson. And, of course, up front you got Bradley Chubb. Those are the guys that you want to be inserting into your lineups if you have a lot of Broncos available or Broncos on your bench. Eagles, Cowboys, I'm all on board. Jalen Hurts delivering you a four-eyed title this week to all the four-eyed fans out there. Miles Sanders, obviously. Mike, any wide receivers for Philadelphia you feel comfortable starting this week?
Maybe Jalen Reagor, possibly. Greg Ward's a good DFS play. He's super cheap on DFS, and he worked with Jalen Hurts a lot in the preseason and on the practice squad. I want to say I don't hate Jalen Hurts. The problem that I have with Jalen Hurts, I'll make this quick, he masks the problems that the Philadelphia Eagles have. He's elusive enough that he makes the line look good. The defensive backs can only cover wide receivers for so long, so these wide receivers get open, they can make plays. So he makes a bad general manager look good. So basically, if you turn a team over to a guy like him, they're not going to focus on building. They're going to keep giving out bad contracts. So he does the last thing that Eagles fan want, and that's keeping Howie Roseman as the GM. So that's the problem I have with Jalen Hurts.
Sounds a lot like what RG3 was in Washington back in 2012.
And Mike Shanahan hated him, too, for some reason.
Yeah, exactly. On the flip side, look, we talked about this. Zeke is going to be active, but can we trust Ezekiel Elliott versus somebody like starting Tony Pollard? I think the consensus here earlier was that Tony Pollard would be the one you'd be starting, even though Ezekiel Elliott would be technically active for this game. Wide receiver purposes for the Cowboys, Amari Cooper, that's the only guy I feel comfortable starting this week. I know Michael Gallup has had a kind of a mini resurgence, but it's the Cooper show in Dallas. Did you guys agree?
CeeDee Lamb comes out every now and then, but I mean, it's really hit or miss. I mean, he had a big game last week, but one of his touchdowns was on that special teams return.
Right. Exactly, which was a hell of a play by him, but you can't count on something like that, especially this week. So for IDP purposes, for the Eagles, it's really the Alex Singleton show. He's been tackling machine monster for the Eagles. On the flip side, Brandon Graham for the Eagles. For the Cowboys, no Leighton Vander Esch. Rumor is that Sean Lee may be coming back, which means he's good for a play, and then he'll be back on IR by the end of the game, which sucks because he's one of those consummate pros that he puts in so much work. He is really the brainchild of that Dallas defense. He just can't stay on the field. Eventually at some point, players' bodies, they just start breaking down, and that's been the case with him. It's sad, but that's just the way it is, which means more Jalen Smith time at linebacker, Donovan Wilson at safety for Dallas, also going on the Dallas defensive line. I think you cannot go wrong with either Aldon Smith. In fact, I would go Aldon Smith over DeMarcus Lawrence this week just because I think Aldon Smith has a little bit more athleticism to potentially go chase down a Jalen Hurts versus DeMarcus Lawrence. So just keep that in mind. Going to our next game, we got the Rams and the Seahawks. This was a letdown a few weeks ago. Everybody was like, oh, the Seahawks defense is horrible against wide receivers. They're going to, eviscerate them with all the receiving options they have. And they didn't really put up that good of a numbers. I think it was around that time that the Seahawks defense has actually started to turn the corner and play a little bit better. Coincidentally, that coincides with the return of Jamal Adams. That being said, Todd, who are you trusting for this Seahawks receiving corps?
The Rams are actually very good against wide receivers, but I think if you have Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf, you're throwing them out there. And, both are week in and week out top 10 wide receivers.
Okay.
Just depends on the week. So, I guess you never know who you're going to get. Sometimes they both perform, but I'd rather go DK over Tyler Lockett just because I think DK is a freak of nature. But
okay. And, of course, Jonathan, it wouldn't be a four-eyed pregame show without asking you this question.
The last
one of the season.
Oh yeah, I'd be disappointed if I didn't get it.
Cooper Kupp or Robert Woods?
I think I mean, you're probably starting both of them given the matchup, but I think, I mean, Woods has consistently seen more targets over the past few weeks. He also has that rushing upside as well. I noted down that Woods has seen 53 targets compared to Kupp seeing 37 over the last 5 games. So I'd lean Woods over Kupp, but you're starting both probably.
So you're starting Chris Carson at running back, but Teddy, Cam Akers this week. He got injured last week. High ankle sprain, I believe, is the diagnosis. Are you comfortable starting either Darrell Henderson or Mike Brown this week?
So I'm comfortable starting Darrell Henderson. Malcolm Brown,
excuse me. Yep, sorry.
Touchdown dependent for me. I think that if you had the duo of Akers and Henderson and we're kind of flip-flopping back between which one to go with, I think that the most logical thing is that McVay just gives the reins back to Darrell Henderson, but obviously he doesn't always deal with logic. But I would feel comfortable with it and then just kind of hope for the best. But I still don't think we have enough of Malcolm Brown that you're just hoping for a touchdown.
So on the IDP side of the ball, starting with Seattle, Bobby Wagner, you're starting him. He's a monster. I still think that Jamal Adams caps his tackle upside, but you're still throwing him out there just because he is one of the better linebackers in all of fantasy football, as well as Jamal Adams is a go. For the Rams, Troy Reeder, inside linebacker, since taking over for Micah Kaiser, has been playing lights out. John Johnson III, he was one of my top 5 defensive backs in all of fantasy football in the preseason. He has the potential. He was coming off of an injury, though, from last year. That being said, he has not been playing lights out. I believe the last time he had double-digit tackles was week 6 as a strong safety. I'm fading him. At cornerback, I'm definitely going Troy Hill there. And then, so that pretty much rounds out that situation. Let's go to the next game. Got the Titans and the Packers. Can Derrick Henry just needs a couple more games. I want to say like around 194 rushing yards to, over the next 2 games to get the rushing title again this year, at least get to 2,000 yards. Does he get 194 yards, Mike, against the Packers this week?
I think he can. I mean, he really is the offense. Their quarterback's okay, Jorge, right? I know you're a fan.
I've heard that he is okay, yes, in reference to Ryan Tannehill.
I would love to see Derrick Henry get the rushing title again.
Yeah.
But yeah, because a lot of people, not just in fantasy, but at the NFL circles altogether, were just down on, and I'm not talking about coaches, but just analysts and what have you. They were down on Derrick Henry because of his usage the first couple of years, and it wasn't really his fault. He's a rhythm guy. When you don't let him get into a rhythm, he's not going to do anything with it. So I hope he gets it again and proves all his doubters wrong.
We all slept on Derrick Henry way too much. We let him slip way too far.
And you know what? Last year in dynasty circles, everyone's like, sell him. Well, at some point, you got to just keep these guys in your lineup and win football games. Same thing with James Robinson earlier in this year. Why sell these guys when they're helping you win games?
Yeah.
Take the loss next year if you win the money this year. That's the way I see it, because that's what it's all about. Winning the money right now, winning the championship.
And that's why I don't get people giving up draft picks for next year. Like, don't hurt yourself next year, in my opinion. But,
if you have to go all in, and you want to, and you think that you can contend, then I'll gladly mortgage the future, and you can just you can get that all back in the off season. The off season is long.
Yeah.
A player that I think we all slept on after last season, or at least after the past couple seasons, is Aaron Rodgers.
Yes.
He's still in the top 10, and I believe the top 5 in fantasy points per game scoring by a quarterback. Their draft was horrible. They didn't upgrade their wide receiving core. And they drafted Jordan Love as the heir apparent.
And can I just interrupt real quick? Was their draft horrible? Because they're the number 1 seed in the NFC right now.
Yeah.
But are they relying on those draft picks to get them to being the number 1 seed?
Do you really rely on your first year, though? You know what I mean? Like,
that's a fair point.
It's maybe their bad draft did exactly what it needed to do, and that was light a fire under Aaron Rodgers' rear end. And in that case, then it was a great draft. And if they win the Super Bowl, no one's ever going to look back on this draft and go, that was terrible. So,
Aaron Rodgers was going undrafted in some leagues I was in. I mean, obviously after week 1, he was getting snatched up pretty quick. But right. I remember there was some leagues I was looking at going, Aaron Rodgers is there. Nah, I'll give it a miss. But
no, but here's the thing. Does Aaron Rodgers next season get overdrafted because of this season?
We always see that with quarterbacks. we always say like someone's going to overdraft Justin Herbert. Josh Allen is going to go in like the third round. I don't know.
Right.
I'm starting to be a believer in maybe wait on your quarterback, to be honest.
For the running back position, Aaron Jones, he had been quiet for a few weeks. He certainly came out and put up fantasy points last week. Are we expecting another big game from him? Is he going? Is he going to go toe for toe? Toe for toe. I don't even think that's an expression. Is he going to go head to head with Derrick Henry this week in rushing production, Teddy?
I don't think he's going to go head to head with Derrick Henry. Even though I wish he would, because I have Aaron Jones and I'm facing Derrick Henry. But I think he's still going to be involved enough that he's going to be able to be efficient on the ground. And I think Jamal Williams is either out or doubtful. Or,
Yeah, he's out.
And so he doesn't have a lot behind him. And so I think he should at least get the snaps, get the volume, and put together what we kind of expect from him.
Do we see A.J. Dillon?
I mean, he has to leave the field at some point, I think. So, yeah.
Maybe for a breather or two, but I don't see
You don't think they'll mix him in?
I think for a breather or two, but I don't think they'll – I don't think he's a fantasy viable – I don't think he's going to hamper Aaron Jones' production.
Fair enough.
Davonte Adams, obviously, you're starting, and I think you can safely say you're starting both Corey Davis and A.J. Brown this week at the receiving option. I think both have been playing lights out. Going back to what Mike said, you're definitely starting Ryan Tannehill. I think I called him being a QB1 this season. I think he's going to finish the season as a QB1. That's just my take there. For the wide receivers for the Packers outside of Davonte Adams, Todd, if I had to give you the option of Alan Lazard versus MVS, who would you start?
Oh, that's a hard one. Who is their wide receiver 3? I'd probably go MVS just because he's getting those. I mean, he just has terrible hands, but he does get those long balls. And so if he can come down with one, he'll have a decent day. But honestly, it's going to be Davonte Adams and Aaron Jones all day long.
Okay. And then let's go
Did
first
you see
one.
that fumble he had a couple of weeks ago? It cost the Packers the game. I was watching an interview. People were giving him death threats and threatening to kill his family. What is wrong with people? What is wrong with people?
Fans are bad. Come on now.
This is the Colts game, I think you're referring
Was it?
to.
It was a fumble, like either in overtime or right at the end of the game or something like that, and cost them the game. And I was just shocked how crazy people are.
Yeah, and I hope it wasn't fantasy related, but if it was, look, if you're having to send death threats because people are costing you money, maybe you shouldn't be playing fantasy football, or at least maybe you shouldn't be gambling in general. If that's the case, leave these players alone. They're paid to play football, not to score points on your fantasy football team. That's just my take there, as I'm sure all of you can agree as well. For IDP purposes, Zadarius Smith, pass rusher for the Packers. Christian Kirksey, I think, should get plenty of work today because Derrick Henry is kind of an up-the-gut type of runner, and that's where Christian Kirksey will be. So look for him to have some tackle upside. Darnell Savage, strong safety for the Green Bay Packers. I've kind of been big on him the past few weeks. I think he's starting to climb up there in terms of not only his playmaking potential and coverage, but as far as making tackles. And he's going to get plenty of opportunity versus this run-heavy team of the Tennessee Titans. On the flip side, Kevin Byard has definitely been playing very well at safety for the Titans. So he's definitely a must start this week if you have him, or if he's available on your roster, pick him up. Chances are you don't have a better option at safety unless you have a Jamal Adams. And yes, I think that covers that one. Let's go to the Patriots and the Bills for Monday Night Football. What are our thoughts there? Let's go Josh Allen. David, what are your thoughts with Josh Allen?
I mentioned it before. I'm worried about Josh Allen's upside. I think his floor is very safe, but I do think that Belichick limits him from having a Broncos-esque game like he did last week. I'm a bit cautious about him. Also, Stephon Diggs. What's the status on his ankle? We haven't really heard too much on that this week.
So as of right now, he's active. In terms of whether or not he's been a full participant or not, that I'm not sure. But even if he was limited in practice this week, would you sit Stephon Diggs?
You can't sit Stephon Diggs. I mean, he's just too good. Yeah, you got to.
Todd, what about Gabriel Davis in the event that Stephon Diggs last minute is declared out?
Well, then I'd for sure fire him up. Patriots haven't been too great against wide receivers, but They did. The Patriots did kind of limit Josh Allen the last time they played. Though he kind of had a bum game, but yeah, I like Gabby Davis a lot. I mean, he does have a touchdown in 4 of the last 6 weeks, and when he's out there, Josh Allen likes him too. So, and especially with no John Brown still, I mean, Cole Beasley's gonna get his work obviously, but
Love Cole Beasley.
yep.
Totally underrated. I think he's like 40 yards shy of getting 1,000 yards on the season. I hope he gets that
Crazy.
this week. Teddy, Zach Moss, Devin Singletary. What are your thoughts there?
I mean, I think Zach Moss is the more talented of the two running backs, but they're getting each other's way, right? We'll put it that way. And so I think if you're picking one of them, I would still go Zach Moss, but I don't think you're doing so with confidence. And I would see if you could go a different route if the championship is on the line.
They're also the number 2 and number 3 running backs on their own team behind Josh Allen.
Yeah, right behind Allen.
Okay, so
And they're both good at doing different things, and so that's why we'll never see either one featured. Like one of them's better at catching the ball and playing out in space, and the other one's better between the tackles.
So Jonathan, let me ask you.
It's terrible for us.
Jonathan, let me ask you a this or that question. If you had to start any Bills running back or Ty Johnson for the Jets, who would you start?
I mean, I can't start Ty Johnson for the Jets. I think they give Frank Gore too much work to Ty
T-Ron's
Johnson.
back this week, I thought, as well, right?
Yeah, Mike's boy.
I love it.
I'd probably go Singletary, but as Teddy said, you can't trust them, and also you look at the red zone work. Josh Allen just steals too much work in that area. Any sort of goal line carry, it's going to go to Josh Allen first.
Okay, so for the Patriots, I'm not trusting anybody on this team for my fantasy football championship.
Fire up all Patriots. They're amazing.
True words of a Patriots homer. For dynasty value, Mike, who do we got here for both of these teams?
I'm staying away from the Patriots. Sorry, David.
That's all right. I am too.
I might take a shot on a guy like N'Keal Harry or Asi, or I can't remember the other tight end's name right now.
Is it?
No, can't remember. It was one of the guys that they drafted this year. As far as the Bills, I'm staying away from the running backs just because I don't know who's going to do what. Obviously, Josh Allen's the guy. But for me, the one Bill I want is Gabriel Davis out of UCF. I think John Brown's gone next year. And Dawson Knox as well. He'll be primed for a third-year breakout next year as well. So,
for IDP purposes, for the Bills, Tremaine Edmonds, Matt Milano, linebackers, and Jordan Poyer. He, another Pro Bowl snub this year. He's one of the best strong safeties in all of football and in fantasy football. For the Patriots, I would say Adrian Phillips safety, and that would be it. And that's if like you really don't have any other options left. If you forgot to fill in an option in one of the 4 games that's already played this week, I would insert him. But reservations are strong. And with that, that wraps up our 4-eyed pregame show for Week 16. Guys, we made it through all 16 weeks of the season. Woo!
I know. 4 months. It's gone quick.
It has gone quick, and like we said at the beginning of the show, look, thank you very much for joining us this entire season. Hopefully we're leading you to some 4-eyed championships, aka fantasy football titles. You can look for the winner of the 4-eyed championships tournament on Tuesday morning, coming down to Ryan Weiss and David Gattiri. So good luck to those gentlemen. And all of you here, around the frames, Jonathan, Todd, Teddy, David, Mike, whether you're, here, one of us at Fantasy and Frames, or you're a guest, you have Fantasy and Frames, you've all been a family here. And we definitely appreciate it. Aaron, Nate, who can't join us, Teddy, Ken, everybody I know I'm forgetting tons of people. Thank you so much for all your work here and helping all the 4-eyed fans get to their championships, or at very least enjoy playing fantasy football in 2020. This year has sucked. Can't wait for 2021. And if anything we've done here has provided a pleasing distraction to get you to enjoy some of your time, that's all we could ask for. So thank you very much for supporting us. And don't forget, we have Dynasty content coming in the middle of January. We got fantasy baseball content coming your way. Now, Todd, you're putting out podcasts with Aaron and Nate every week. And, the article content will be there. We'll be doing a year in review show here for fantasy football. I want to say in the next week or so. And of course, we'll be putting out article content all season long, getting you ready for free agency, getting you ready for the draft, getting you ready for the fantasy football season next year. Look for another charity tournament, both in baseball and in football. A lot of stuff going on here at Fantasy and Frames, and we can't wait to help you out next year and for years to come. So for everybody here, thank you very much for all that's paying attention out there. Thank you for joining us, and Happy New Year, folks.